Mary Daly was a radical feminist philosopher, part of the group of American radical feminists emerging in the late 1960s through early 1970s. In this video, I'm going to talk about her contributions to what we now call conceptual engineering. This is currently a fashionable topic in philosophy, and while some articles refer to Rudolf Carnap's work from the 1950s, which was concerned with scientific applications, most articles treat the starting point as Sally Haslinger's paper, Gender and Race, What Are They? What Do We Want Them to Be?, which wasn't published until the year 2000. Haslinger's paper combines feminist philosophy and philosophy of race, but Mary Daly had been doing conceptual engineering in the subdiscipline of feminist philosophy since her first book in 1968, through her subsequent books in 1973, 1978, 1984. This project culminated in her finally writing a sort of dictionary in 1987, which you can see pictured here, called Webster's First New Intergalactic Wickedary of the English Language. Daly is not cited or acknowledged in Haslinger. The Wickedary is often funny. For example, this is the seal of approval. It is often poetic. For example, in the sentences, seals bestow their seal of approval on the whole ecstatic enterprise. Owls concede that the idea of cosmic concordance seems wise. Frogs croak that they like this preposterous joke. Most enthusiastic of all are the wondrous multicolored winged creatures who, mocking patriarchal pomposity, declare, "In the beginning was the bird." All seem to agree that they have the last word. It is full of beautiful illustrations. But it is also maddeningly difficult to read, precisely because so much of it is a new language, and it has barely introduced one new term or revision of a term before it incorporates that and then moves on to another. Sometimes it uses a new term or an old term in a new way long before explaining it. For an example of this difficulty, let's just take the title of the book. A Webster in Old English was a female weaver. Daly shifts this from the weaving of cloth to the weaving of words, saying, according to the Wickedary, Webster means a woman whose occupation is to weave, especially a weaver of words and word webs. So Webster means something like a female wordsmith. A Wickedary is a wicked dictionary, where wicked has its roots in an Old English word for witch. So to be wicked in Daly's sense is to be beyond patriarchal definitions of good and evil. She also just likes that Wickedary sounds enough like dictionary that its meaning will not be entirely opaque. The Wickedary then is essentially feminist, aiming to escape the constraints of patriarchal language and the constraints that language may impose upon thought as part of the project of achieving women's liberation. Daly describes the Wickedary as a meta-dictionary, written for wicked Websters, i.e. female wordsmiths working for women's liberation, saying that it gossips out the elemental webs of words hidden in patriarchal dictionaries and other resources. Gossip here is another word that has been re-engineered, no longer pejorative, just meaning to communicate, to take part in the festivity of wordplay. She describes some of the word's etymologies as meta-etymologies, in the same way that some people doing conceptual engineering today talk about metalinguistic negotiation. She says these meanings are disclosed after the patriarchal definitions, that chronologically they occur later, and she says they transform the meanings of these etymologies, wrenching them out of their old contexts and making them visible and audible in a new context. Meta-etymologies move beyond and transcend the usual etymologies. This is exactly the project of re-engineering words in order to serve a social justice project, here a feminist project. She says The work of the Wickedary is a process of freeing words from the cages and prisons of patriarchal patterns. It is about innovation/creation. It is a declaration that words and women have served the father's sentences long enough. The Wickedary revises language in several ways. One thing it does is to change meaning by changing spelling. So gynecology, which she calls a gynocidal branch of murderous modern medicine, where gynocide is genocide against female people, becomes slashed to turn into gyn, G-Y-N, /ecology, which is also the title of her best-known book. And this names gynocentric ecology, or what we might now call ecofeminism. Another thing it does is change meaning by changing context, in a similar way to what we might now think of under the heading of reclaiming slurs. It matters who says the word and how they mean it. So her examples here are the words hag and prude. A hag in the archaic definition was a female demon, and this meaning is reclaimed as a positive. She says, Wickedarians keep this word intact, freeing it to bespeak once again, to name the fierce beauty, courage, and wisdom of crones. A prude in patriarchal meaning was someone overly attentive to propriety, but its older meaning was proud, something like a wise or good woman. This older meaning is brought forward and used as a positive. Poetry also has a role to play in the revision. She says that by changing the rhythms of words, we allow them to combine in new ways. She says we release them from cells of conventional senses. Daly connects these conceptual revisions to the project of consciousness raising, one of the key methodologies of second wave feminism, where women come together to realize the shape of their common oppression. She refers to this as spelling out loud, referring to the previous innovation of changing spelling to change meaning. She says, when spell-casting women spell out loud in original/archaic words the truths of our lives, we counter and overcome these negative vibrations. There are loads of interesting definitions in the Wickedary, so I encourage you to check it out for yourself. I'll tell you about one, namely Daly's definition of women's space, first introduced in her 1973 book, Beyond God the Father. So she writes here, space created by women who choose to separate ourselves from the state of servitude. Free space, space in which women actualize archimagical powers, releasing the flow of gynergy, space in which women spin and weave, creating cosmic tapestries, space in which women find rooms, looms, brooms of our own. And this obviously is a clear reference to Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, which is mentioned at several points throughout the Wickedary. And she also links this entry, as you see, to another on new space, which is first introduced in the same book, defined as space on the boundary of patriarchal institutions, space created by women, which provides real alternatives to the archetypal roles of fatherland, space in which women realize power of presence.